What's up, everyone, and welcome into episode number 482, where week one of college football has come and gone, at least for the state of Michigan. If you're watching this tonight, we do have North Carolina versus TCU tonight to truly end week one of college football, but can't believe we're already 1 week through. Obviously, both Michigan State and Michigan are both 1-0, and that's exactly what this episode is going to be about. It's going to be a recap about Michigan's win over New Mexico, Michigan State's win over Western Michigan. Let's get started out right there with Michigan State's 23-6 win over Western Michigan. This was a game, in my opinion, that was nowhere in doubt that Michigan State was going to lose this game, anywhere part of it. Michigan State, I thought, looked great offensively and defensively in the first half. Defensively, I thought they looked great all game. Offensively, great first half, really poor second half. And that's really where I want to kind of start out this conversation, because I think Michigan State overall defensively was just fantastic throughout this game. You had Jordan Hall doing great things, but the offense is where it's going to really kind of dig into how I thought they played. I thought in the first half, Michigan State played really, really well offensively. I thought Aiden Childs was using his legs. I thought Aiden Childs was getting the ball to his playmakers. I thought Mekhi Frazier and Brandon Tullis were great on the run game. Mekhi Frazier had over 100 yards on the ground, which was the first time since 2023 against Michigan with Nate Carter. So it's been a little while since Michigan State has had a running back with over 100 yards in a game, which is obviously really nice to see. You have Frazier and Tullis both scoring touchdowns on the ground. And then you had Omari Kelly. I thought Omari Kelly looked the best out of the wide receiver room, to be completely honest with you. The hype going into this season around him seems to be very, very legit. He had 7 receptions, 75 yards. I thought he was a guy that was really standing out from the get-go for me. And then obviously you have the other wide receiver, the true, in my opinion, wide receiver number one, Nick Marsh. He had 5 receptions, 32 yards, did have a nice touchdown catch from Aiden Childs. A little bit underthrown, but really great play design by Brian Lindgren, which on his own I thought was pretty good, especially in the first half. I thought you really saw him really develop some great offensive play designs. I thought you saw him really allow Aiden Childs to take the offense under control, and you saw an offensive line that was able to get a push against this Western Michigan defense, and it's a defense that I've talked a little bit about in the preview that I thought they wouldn't be that great. I thought that they would be the strongest part of this team, but I didn't know exactly what this defensive line was going to do against Michigan State. They didn't really get a ton of pressure outside of really the 2-minute offense, which that's a big issue for Michigan State, is that pocket presence, is that situation when Michigan State has to throw the ball. I thought that Western Michigan did get some pressure, which is a little bit concerning, especially coming from a defensive line that isn't returning a ton of talent from last year. They did lose a best defensive tackle from last year. Now, you do have to give Western Michigan credit in this game, because defensively in the second half, I thought that Western played extremely well for the most part. I thought they were able to cause Michigan State some issues. Michigan State wasn't able to run the ball as well in the second half, and I also thought that Michigan State went a little bit more conservative in the second half just because they were up by a decent margin. Michigan State got shut out in the second half, so you really have to give Coach Lance Taylor and that defense a ton of credit for coming out in the second half, really stifling this Michigan State defense. And I think you have to give credit to not only the Western Michigan defense for doing that, but it allowed Western Michigan to kind of stay in this game for the most part. I know I said it in the introduction, it wasn't really ever close to Michigan State losing. I don't think it ever really truly got close. I don't think it really got out of the comfort zone, but it could have gotten a lot worse, especially because of how good Michigan State was in the first half offensively. It just seemed like Western could not get anything going at all defensively. It seemed like Michigan State was able to run the ball at will. Michigan State was able to pick up those third and shorts, was able to end up scoring the ball into the end zone several different times on the ground, through the air. Like, that offense for Michigan State was a dramatic increase from what we saw last year. And then really a lot of the same in the second half. That's one major concern going into this season, was what was Michigan State going to do in the second half, because offensively last year, I thought Michigan State in the first half was pretty good. Now, obviously, running the ball wasn't the greatest, and I think this is a little bit of a step up, and I think they were able to get a little bit more of a push offensively, which is obviously a good sign. But that second half offense continues to be a concern of Michigan State, and I think that's going to be something to continue to focus on, especially when you have Boston College coming up this week, which in my opinion is a much better opponent than Western Michigan, and no shot at Western Michigan there. But on the other side, I thought Michigan State defensively was able to do everything that they needed to win this game. They basically shut out Western Michigan. The only reason why Western Michigan was able to put up any points was a really great play by Tate Halleck. He was actually a former Michigan State Spartan that ended up transferring to Western Michigan. He had a pick six in this game. Really late in the game when Aiden Childs wasn't playing, LSU Milivojevic was the one that ended up throwing the pick six, which is obviously unfortunate, but that late in the game, I thought that you really should have given him some time, and you really took out the starters. Again, you never want to see a pick six from anyone at all. But a really great play from Tate Halleck there. And then offensively, I thought we saw some good things from Western Michigan for the most part, especially that first drive. I thought Brady Jones made a couple really nice throws throughout this game. I think Western Michigan probably should have attacked downfield a little bit more than they did. Now, do I think Michigan State defensively, especially the pass coverage, was great? I don't know if great is the word I would use. I think they were pretty good. I think a couple of those passes were just really pinpoint passes that are extremely tough to make. Now, I do think the defensive on those should be a little bit better, but when you're making those types of passes from Brady Jones, and even if Brock Lowry came in and made a couple really great passes, I thought that Western Michigan had some signs there, but outside of really those, Western Michigan didn't really get anything going, especially Jalen Buckley. We talked about Jalen Buckley in the preview, how he was going to be the main guy, especially at the running back position, because Cole Cabana was not going to be in this game, and how Western Michigan's strength last year was running the ball. And in this game, that was not the case at all. Jalen Buckley, 9 carries, 21 yards. Western Michigan as a whole ran for 29 yards total. Now, that has to do with Brady Jones getting sacked quite a bit, Brock Lowry being the second leading rusher on this team, but 29 yards on 24 carries. We talked about how Michigan State last year was really good at stopping the run. It looks like they're going to be that again this year. It's really going to depend on this pass rush. And Michigan State did have some opportunities and was able to have some pass rush in this game, was able to get to the quarterback a couple of times. There's actually a sack fumble because of that, which Western Michigan ended up recovering. But there's a real possibility here that there is potential for this Michigan State defensive line to get pressure. And also, even if that's not the case, it seems like they're going to be pretty good at stopping the run for the most part. And then you have a couple wide receivers I thought that were pretty good for Western Michigan. A lot of these guys, again, are going to be guys that really weren't well known last year. But you have Braylon Brooks had 3 receptions, 85 yards. Tyleek Williams had 6 receptions, 74 yards. There was really only a couple pretty big plays that Western Michigan had in this game, and you really have to give credit to Michigan State for their response after those big plays. The defense was able to come out, absolutely shut Western Michigan down, and really Western Michigan only had one true serious attempt in Michigan State zone, and it was a field goal that was pretty badly missed. So I thought Michigan State overall, if you're looking at the positives on this game, I thought Michigan State defensively looked really, really good. Offensively, I think if you do what you did in the first half for a lot of these games, I think you're going to win a lot of these games. But if you do what you did in the second half, it's going to be a very, very, very disappointing year. And I think that's going to be truly what is going to be the difference between a bowl year and a not bowl year, is Michigan State's going to have to figure out what they're going to do better offensively in the second half. Because if they get shut out in the second half against Boston College, some of these better opponents, they're not going to win very many games, and we're going to be talking about another disappointing year. And I think Jonathan Smith realizes that. He had a press conference earlier today, basically said that he wasn't really happy with how the second half offense looked. And obviously, I wouldn't be very happy if I was the head coach. Now, he did also mention that, they don't think about really holding kind of plays back per se. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because I did go into this game talking about how I thought Michigan State needed to keep it pretty simple. And I thought Michigan State, for the most part, did keep it pretty simple, which I think is a good thing. And I saw some progression in that. But I also think you want to show some things, and I think Michigan State did, in some design runs for Aiden Childs, a couple other things here and there. But overall, I thought that this game was pretty positive for the most part. I don't think there's like a ton of like hype to take away from it. I think it's a good win. I think Michigan State took advantage of their opportunities. I think Michigan State did what they needed to do. And it's one of those things where you walk away at the end of this game and you're like, okay, like it was a win. Was it pretty? No. Are you upset about it? No. And I think that's where Michigan State is right now and headed into Boston College. And it didn't seem like Michigan State abstained a ton of really serious injuries. Sounds like they stayed healthy throughout this game, which is obviously really good. And there's a couple of players that might be back against Boston College, which I'll talk about that preview later this week. But let's go over to Michigan because they end up getting a 34-17 win over New Mexico in Bryce Underwood's first ever start at the Big House. I thought Bryce Underwood looked really good in this game. I thought Bryce Underwood made the throws he needed to make. Bryce Underwood did not make mistakes or did not make the big mistake in this game, which is obviously extremely important because when you talk about the other young quarterbacks making the first start in their college career around the country, like we're talking about Arch Manning. Like he wasn't great. Julian Sayin, was he great? No. Do I think Bryce Underwood was better than both of those in their first game? Yeah, I truly think so. And I think Bryce Underwood showed his potential and obviously showed off his arm strength in this game. He was just zipping that ball all over the field. He was able to get that ball to his wide receivers, to his tight ends. Martin Klein, great tight end. He had 6 receptions, 93 yards, 1 touchdown. Samaj Morgan was involved. Now, he did have a punt return fumble, muff punt, which obviously isn't really great. Now, they did receive it back, but overall, you really can't be too upset. And then you have Donovan McCulley, which is going to be their wide receiver number 1 for a lot of these fans. 4 receptions, 31 yards. I thought the wide receivers for Michigan and tight ends looked pretty good. With that being said, the biggest issue for this wide receiver room, especially in week 1, was drops. There were several times where Bryce Underwood made a really great play, extended a play, threw it right to his wide receiver, and completely dropped it. Now, again, with Bryce Underwood, he has a ton of arm strength. I don't know if that's necessarily a factor in that. That's going to be something that Michigan's going to have to work on. That's something that Michigan's going to have to focus on because when you play some of these better opponents, especially Oklahoma this upcoming week, you cannot afford drops on first downs. You cannot afford these type of mistakes. Now, again, when you have a team like New Mexico that heading into this game I thought would be good offensively, especially because of Coach Eck having that history of being good offensively, and I thought they were pretty good offensively in this game. I'll talk about that against Michigan defense here shortly, but this New Mexico defense, while they give a ton of effort, do I think they're going to be the best defense that this Michigan team has faced? No. I don't think that's going to be anywhere close to the best defense that this Michigan team is going to face. Now, I think they made some great plays. I think they caused some pressure on Bryce Underwood. And I think Bryce Underwood as a whole was really good throughout that pressure. But Michigan was able to get big plays in the game. And there were some turnovers in this game. But when they were able to get big plays, especially on the ground, because Justice Haynes was absolutely fantastic in this game. 16 carries, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think he's everything that Michigan fans thought he was going to be. I thought he was causing havoc to this New Mexico defense. Jordan Marshall, also a guy that I thought was pretty good in this game. Didn't have a ton of yards per carry, but he's not supposed to be that kind of guy. He's supposed to be the big, tough, running wide receiver. He's supposed to get you the short yard situations. Justice Haynes is the guy that's supposed to be making the big runs, making the big breaks, and he exactly did that in this game. I was really impressed with Justice Haynes. I was impressed with this offensive line. I was pretty impressed with this Michigan offense. Now, I do think they have a ways to go. I do think that they can be better. What's going to happen if Justice Haynes doesn't get those long runs? That's a real question mark, and I think that's going to be something that I'm going to talk about later this week. But I think offensively, if you're a Michigan fan, I think you have to be pretty happy with this performance on the offensive side. And if you're a New Mexico fan listening to this, this is a really good run offense. It's always going to be a really good run offense. Offensive line is always going to be really good. Justice Haynes is a really good running back. So I don't really think you can be too upset at this game because this was going to be, in my opinion, never a game that you were going to win at the Big House, even though I think that New Mexico had a chance to make this a little bit closer and to really convert on some opportunities that they had. I thought that New Mexico could have made this a little bit more interesting than 17 points. I think it could have been maybe a single-digit type game, maybe 10 points type game. I think that Jack Lane had some opportunities in this game. Now, he did throw 3 interceptions, which obviously is not going to help them out, but I thought that he overall looked pretty good, especially against a Michigan defense that is going to be, again, really good, especially stopping the run, and that's exactly what they were in this game. They were able to really stop Scottrade Humphrey, 33 yards on the ground, 3.3 yards per average. Like, no one's going to be able to really run against this Michigan defense. Like, not New Mexico, maybe not until later on, maybe not until some of these better teams come into the Big House or go on the road. But I thought New Mexico did a pretty good job of attacking Michigan's secondary. And if you really have to think about one weakness on this Michigan defense, I think the secondary really showed that it could be that. Now, again, it's week 1. We don't know exactly how the secondary is going to look like, but Coach Eck was able to attack this secondary when they were able to have time. Now, the key word is have time, right? Like, Michigan doesn't usually give quarterbacks a ton of time just because of how much pressure they can force or how much they can get to the quarterback. But when Jack Lane was able to have time, he was able to hit guys like Dorian Thomas, 10 receptions, 71 yards, 2 touchdowns. Michael Buckley, 2 receptions, 45 yards. Keegan Johnson, 7 receptions, 38 yards. He was able to get it to his wide receiver. I think that's going to be something that Michigan fans and fans across the country are going to continue to focus on, is that secondary, because now they're going to go up against Oklahoma. And we know how good Oklahoma's QB is. We know how good Oklahoma's wide receiver room is. And I think that's going to be the biggest test this Michigan team has, is what are they going to do through the secondary? Are they going to be able to stop the pass? Are they going to be able to get to the quarterback enough? And I think that's exactly what they did in this game. They're able to get to the quarterback enough. They're able to get their hands in the way of the ball. They were able to tip the ball. At least 1 interception came because of that. I believe 2 even came because of that. If that pressure is not there, are they going to be able to force those turnovers? Is the secondary going to be better? Don't necessarily know the answer to that. But in this game alone, Michigan secondary was good enough. Their defensive line was able to get enough pressure. They were able to get this win, and they are able to get a 17 win at home in Bryce Underwood's first career start at Michigan, which, again, I said at the beginning, I thought he looked good. I thought he was composed. I thought he was able to make plays with his legs. I think you really saw everything that he needed to do in game number 1, which is the most important because he needs to keep the ball safe. And he was able to do that. And it's all about the wide receivers making plays. It's about the wide receivers making catches. If they can do that, if they can keep Bryce Underwood safe, if they don't allow a ton of pressure on him, if they allow him to use his legs, this offense with better wide receivers can get better and be better. And it really starts with wide receivers getting better by catching the ball. You cannot be dropping the ball as college wide receivers. If this is going to be an issue throughout the season, that could really impact what this offense does. It's game number 1. We don't know exactly what they're going to do, but you have guys like Diamond McCulley. You have guys like Klein. You have pieces in this wide receiver, this tight end room, that you can be good enough. And if Justice Haynes can continue to do what he did at New Mexico, I think this is going to be a Michigan offense that is going to be much improved and is a big reason why they end up winning this game against New Mexico. So, yeah, that's really my recap of Michigan and Michigan State. I thought there were some positive and negative things from both sides. I think Michigan maybe has a little bit more stuff that they can handle right away. I think drops you can fix pretty easily. I think Michigan State has a little bit more to go, especially offensively. I do think if they're not as conservative in the second half, I do think that's going to help. But I think both of these sides should have good things to come out of these games. And they're both 1-0, which is exactly where you want to be at this point. Both of these teams are going to be going up against better opponents this week. Michigan State against Boston College, Michigan against Oklahoma. Obviously, Oklahoma is going to be a better team. That's College game day. I'll talk about that coming up. But both of these teams need to be better in their second games to win. And I think both of these coaches' staff agree and realize that is the case. So both 1-0, both great starts to the year, both fun games. And yeah, that is a wrap to episode number 482. I'll definitely preview Michigan State, Boston College, Michigan, Oklahoma, and the rest of the college games in later episodes and previews. But thanks for tuning in, and tune in to the next episode.